One of the first things we need to take a look at is the difference between what are called prokaryotes and eukaryotes. I tend to abbreviate these where they will be called Proks and Euks. Let's start with prokaryotes. That prefix pro, oh, I need a different color. Let me grab this here real quick. All right. Pen color. Whoops. Sorry, let me grab this. There we go. The prefix pro means before. Karyotes refers to nut, and nut here has a reference toward the nucleus of a cell. And so these are organisms whose DNA is not enclosed inside a nucleus. So that's one of the main characteristics here. If you take a look at this picture over here, it has what's called a nucleoid, and it is more of a circular type of DNA. It's still double-stranded, just like our DNA is, only it's in a circular form, and then it tends to be attached here to the cell membrane. So that's one characteristic of the Proks. The other characteristics is that the Proks do not contain what we call membrane-bound organelles. This would be like the mitochondria, the Golgi body, the lysosome, the endoplasmic reticulum, any of those that have a membrane associated with them. They do have one organelle, however, and that is the ribosomes, you can see here. Ribosomes are the only organelles that do not have a membrane surrounding them, so they are a part of the prokaryotes. The other thing I notice about prokaryotes is they're all bacteria. All bacteria would fall under the category of a prok. And they tend to have, they still have a cell membrane. They have a cell wall. Some bacteria have what's called a capsule. They tend to have flagella that's used for movement. Some can also have what's called cilia for movement. And then you'll also notice these other hair-like projections coming out here called pili. Pili are actually used to help the bacterium attach itself to a host cell. So every time you get infected with the bacterium that makes you ill, the reason why they are able to infect your cells is because they attach themselves to your cells through the use of this pili. Now, if we take a look at the kingdoms, we now have what's called a 6-kingdom system. Just kind of draw this here. 3, 4, 5, 6. And if we take a look at these two branches here, this would represent the bacterium. And an older term for this was the Monera. But what they've done is they've actually separated the different types of bacteria into their own categories. And so this one here, we have archaea bacteria. And eubacteria. Archaea bacteria are the most primitive. You can only find these bacteria that live in what we call extreme conditions. You will find these in places such as geysers, such that we find in Yellowstone Park, where we have those very hot geysers that come out of the ground. You can find these guys in very, very, very salty environments like the Dead Sea. It is called dead for a reason because no other organisms can live there because of the high salt content. But we do find archaeobacteria found in those areas. And then the eubacteria refers to, the EU refers to true bacteria. And this would be the bacteria that we are used to discussing. This would be like the bacteria that tends to make you ill, the bacteria that we find on our skin, the normal bacteria in your intestines, and so forth. But out of the 6 kingdoms, these 2 here are the proks. If we move on to the eukaryotes, the eu here refers to true, nut. So these are the organisms that do have their DNA enclosed inside a nucleus. And they have membrane-bound organelles. And this would include like our animal cell. Some of the organelles we'll be taking a look at, the centrioles, peroxisome, the mitochondria, the Golgi body, and it also includes the ribosomes that do not have a membrane associated with them. It would also include our plant cells. Some differences between plants that we'll take a look at would be that plants have a cell wall, they have a central vacuole, and they have chloroplast. Well, if we go back to that 6 kingdom idea again, let me erase this and just redraw this. And I've got those 2 over here for our proks. Well, the other 4 kingdoms are eukaryotes, the euks. And this is going to include plants, animals, fungi, and a group called Protista, or the protists. You're probably familiar with the plants, the animals, fungi. Protista is one of those categories where it's kind of a grab bag of organisms because they couldn't figure out exactly where to put them. And we can actually, what we're going to take a look at just very briefly is that Protista can be subdivided into animal-like, fungi-like, and plant-like. In terms of fungi-like, this would include things like our slime, molds, and water molds. I think I have other pictures of the animal-like and the plant-like. Let's take a look at the next slides here. So, of course, this is one of the easy ones. This will be our plant kingdom. Fruits, vegetables, flowering trees. It would be the conifers or the evergreen trees. It even includes microscopic plants that you find in oceans that other organisms feed off of. There's our animal kingdom, variety of animals. There's our fungi kingdom. Now, even though I'm just showing mushrooms, this also includes molds as well. Certain types of mildews will fall in here along with the mushrooms. And then if we go back to the Protista kingdom, these would be examples of animal-like protists. These are microscopic organisms found in like pond water. This little guy here is called a stentor. This guy here is a paramecium. And we have an amoeba. This guy here, the stentor, has cilia, which are tiny hair-like projections that are constantly moving to help bring in food particles. Paramecium, you may not be able to see it very well, but it has tiny little cilia on its surface as well. The amoeba uses what's called cytoplasmic streaming, and it has these what we call pseudopods for false feet, and they actually move the cytoplasm through that, and it actually moves the entire amoeba through its environment. Very, very, very slow moving. In terms of plant-like, okay, let me just erase this here. Plant-like protists, this includes seaweed and algae. These are not plants. They don't have a complex organ system. In our body, we have veins and arteries that transport blood and nutrients and gases. In true plants, they also have organ systems, xylem for carrying water, phloem for carrying food. Seaweed and algae do not have that. So they are not considered a plant, but they are plant-like because they're green. They have chlorophyll, which means they have chloroplasts, so they can go through the process of photosynthesis.